Shalom Aleichem, my dear brothers and sisters. I was talking to my friend about proofs of God and proofs that the Torah is from God. And, even though we have, I think, many proofs, like scientific, for example, certain things that science is just now discovering that were written already thousands of years ago in the Talmud, in other Jewish texts. So there are, I think, a lot of proofs. But one thing that always astounded me is the prophecy. Um, and what I mean by prophecy, if you read the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and it gives prophecy about of what will happen with the Jewish people. And when you read it, it's amazing because when you read it, it sounds like you're reading the history of the Jewish people, even though that history was written before it actually happened. For example, it says that Jews will come to the land of Israel. This prophecy was made when they were, coming out of Egypt, right? So it says that Jewish people will come to the land of Israel, that they will be prosperous and all that, and then eventually they will sin, and then eventually an enemy will come from afar and will besiege their cities, and then will exile them, and they will be exiled, and they're going to be persecuted in the exile. And it says even that there's not going to be rest for the sole of their foot when they are in exile, meaning they will be kicked out from place to place. And then it says that while in exile, that God will not destroy the Jewish people completely. And then it says that God will bring the Jewish people back to their land. And basically, when you read it, to me, it's an amazing prophecy, because all this happened exactly as it's written, and it was written before it actually happened. And this is one of the things I mentioned to my friend, that doesn't this prove that this is this book is divine? And now, as far as being amazed about it, by the survival of the Jewish people against all odds, it says that one of the things in the prophecy, that it says that you're going to be left few in numbers. So few in numbers, logically speaking, that means Jews should either assimilate or just disappear, or lose their culture. But yet the Jewish people survive. Now, one might say that maybe I'm biased. The way I look at it is maybe biased, since I'm a Jew. But in reality, not only Jews are talking about this. There are handful of writers, non-Jewish writers, that mention the same thing and are also astonished and amazed by it. For example, Mark Twain, Dostoevsky, Kuprin, and there's like dozen of writers, non-Jewish writers, that write the same thing. They're wondering about how is it that the Jewish people survived all these millenniums and did not, assimilate, or did not somehow disappear like all the ancient civilizations disappeared. And in fact, some of my friends who are Muslim and Christians both at one time mentioned this to me, that one of the things that amazes them is how the Jewish people survived and kept the law, kept their religion. So this is one of the things that I mentioned to my friend, that to me, I said, this is amazing, that this is what proves that there is God and this book is divine. And my friend answered to me, he says, what about gypsies? Gypsies, they're also a small group of people, and they are also exiled throughout the world, or scattered throughout the world, and they are also persecuted, and yet they have not assimilated. They kept their culture. Although I don't think they kept their religion, because I think some gypsies are Muslim, some gypsies are Christians. So I don't think they kept their ancient. I'm pretty sure they had a different religion, I think, in the ancient days. So, but anyways, they did not assimilate. They did not lose their culture, and yet they survived also against all odds, right? So this is what my friend told me, and here's what I think the answer to that is. And I read that this in the Ramban. He's one of the commentators on the Torah, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, and he lived about maybe 1,000 years ago, maybe a little less. And here's what he says. He comments on the part of the book, in the book of Genesis, where it talks about Jewish people going down to Egypt. This was actually Yaakov, peace be upon him, and his descendants, and they were going down to Egypt. And the verse said that when they came, that 70 souls came to Egypt with Yaakov, right? 70 souls. But then when it lists their names, if you count the names, then you count only 69 people. So the question is, what's the discrepancy? Is it 69 or 70? So the Ramban cites a midrash, which actually says that one girl, her name was Yocheved, she was actually born on the way to Egypt. So as they were walking into the city, she was born. And therefore, going into Egypt, there were 70 people, but leaving the land of Canaan, there were 69. So this girl, Yocheved, was born on the way. Now, who was this Yocheved? So this Yocheved, she was actually, if you know a little bit of Torah, then the Yocheved was actually the mother of Moses, peace be upon him. Now, Ramban says that since this is the case, that means if you do the calculations, Jews were in Egypt, actually stayed in the physical land of Egypt for 210 years. And Yocheved, when Jews left Egypt, when God freed the Jewish people from Egypt, Moses, was 80 years old. So 210 minus 80, right, is 130. So that means that Yocheved gave birth to Moses, peace be upon him, when she was 130 years old. So if that is the case, Ramban says, then that's an obvious miracle. That's a miracle, the fact that a woman at 130 years old could give birth. So the Ramban says, why, if that's the case, why is the Torah completely silent about this miracle? When it comes to Sarah, peace be upon her, she gave birth to Yitzhak, peace be upon him, when she was 9 years old. And the Torah made a big deal about it. It says that Sarah laughed because she couldn't believe it. When the angels told her that you're going to give birth to a son in a year from now, she laughed. Right? In Hebrew, the word laugh is tzchok. She laughed because it was like just, she couldn't believe it. And that's why actually she named her son Yitzchak, from the word tzchok, meaning to laugh. And the Torah seems to make a big deal about it, that Sarah at 9 years old gave birth. But when it comes to Yocheved, the Torah is completely silent. Why? So here's what the Ramban says. The Ramban says that the reason for that is because the case of Yocheved, the miracle is not a true miracle. And he explains why. He says, in order for the miracle to be a true miracle, it has to be predicted by a prophet or by an angel. So when it comes to Sarah, the miraculous part about it was that it was actually predicted by an angel that appeared to them, Sarah and Abraham, peace be upon them. But when it comes to Yocheved, nobody predicted, it just happened. And that's what the Ramban says is the biggest difference. And he says, actually, Ramban says that even nowadays, he says, an unlikely event happens once in a while. Like an old woman can give birth. In fact, I remember myself that maybe what, like 10 years ago, I remember reading in the news that a 70-year-old woman gave birth, for example. This has happened nowadays. And the Ramban says that even in his days, an unlikely event does happen once in a while. But when the unlikely event is predicted and it happens exactly as if it happens how it's predicted, that's when it's a real miracle. So that's what the Ramban says. Now, in my own words, I can give you another analogy, which I think is maybe a good analogy. Is like, let's say, for example, let's say you win a lottery ticket. You win a lottery ticket, you guess 6 numbers, each digit could be from 1 to 60, and you guess all of them correctly. For you personally, maybe it sounds like a miracle, like very unlikely event, and it happened to you. But in reality, if you look at it, every time somebody wins, these are chances, somebody among the whole population, somebody wins. So therefore, this time it happened to you. However, if somebody was to predict to you and tell you that on this day, at this time, you're gonna win a lottery ticket using these numbers, and you're gonna win this amount, then you cannot say this is by chance. Why? Because it wasn't predicted. So here's, I think, the main difference between the Jewish survival and the Gypsy survival, is that the Jewish survival, the amazing part about it is that it has been predicted. This proves the Torah, because the whole argument is to prove that the Torah is divine. So the fact that the Jewish survival and the history of the Jewish people, all this was predicted, their exile, their persecution, their return back to the land, them not being destroyed among the nations and not being assimilated completely, right? All that is predicted, and therefore this is what the amazing part about the Torah, and I think this part is what proves the Torah to be divine. And I told my friend, if you find me a book about the gypsies, let's say that was written at least 1,000 years ago, that says the same thing, that they are going to be scattered and they're going to be persecuted and they're going to survive, for example, then there's something to talk about it. I can, then I would maybe agree that this is something, there's something divine to this book. But in fact, there's no such book as far as I know. Now, this reminds me of a story about one of the philosophers. I think he was a French philosopher, Pascal. In fact, there's a computer language, I think, named after him. Pascal, he met once with Louis, King Louis. I'm not sure it's France or Spain, one of these two. But anyways, and the king asked him, what is the proof that there is God? And here's what Pascal, he's not Jewish, and here's what he said. He says, the Jewish people. The Jewish people is the proof that there is God. What he meant was that the fact that Jewish people survived in his generation, this was years ago, for him this was amazing that he's considered that as a proof that there is God. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.